Hello, everyone. Now we are in advanced topics in genetics. For those of you that have had me in the lecture component of my course, this is something I also focus on. And many of you have probably seen, some of the things we'll be looking at here. It really will help you to watch them again to be able to help you with the lab I have in store for you. All right. So to begin, Lab 4 is sort of broken down into two major components. The first part, we're going to be looking at advanced topics in genetic regulation, and then we're going to be looking at something very interesting, something very contemporary, is how viruses actually affect our evolutionary outcome. Where have we picked up viruses in our past? How do we know this? We're going to be looking at paleovirology, and that's actually what today's lab is going to be on, the written component of it for you. The topic of genetic regulation is very complex. And it's something I don't want to have to pull out a paper lab for you, particularly without a face-to-face component. It might be confusing. So I really just want you to get the gist of what's going on. And I think the two films that I have for you to watch, two films, are going to be an excellent gateway to do this. So to prepare you for the films you're about to see, let me explain what we've done so far and what you're going to be seeing, how to sort of clue you into or cue into the important parts to really make sure you pay attention to. All right. So in the previous labs, we've been looking at genetic regulation through sort of the process of transcription and translation. DNA doing its stuff, creating messages, sending it to ribosome translating those messages, into proteins. And those proteins either constitute our body or they cause things to happen. They are catalysts, they're enzymes, which cause you to develop, and they regulate your body, and eventually they bring your body to its end enclosure. Right? Well, the genes in which do that are known as structural genes. They're the bottom level genes. They make the stuff for your body. But structural genes, the things that make this up your body, have to be turned on and off. So that's what we're going to next, is what turns them on and off. So to begin with a brief explanation before we go into the video, the things to watch out for are this. The idea of a three-tier system. Your genetics work in sort of a three-tier sort of model. The bottom stuff that makes the stuff for your body, those genes are known as structural genes. And then you have two tiers of upper level management that coordinate the turning off and on of the structural genes. The very, very top level genes are known as regulatory genes. And there's a lot of different types. There's body plan genes, there's patterning genes. They tell you what sort of patterns you should have, how many fingers you should have, roughly. And body plan will say how many arms or legs you should have, where your head should be, the big sort of organizing things, right? Big genes, the big CEOs. Well, they undergo transcription and translation, and they produce protein products. But those protein products do not make the stuff of your body directly. Those proteins turn on and off the genes that do. Well, the top level genes, the regulatory genes, turn on the next level of management, the second tier. And those are known as switch genes. And we're going to be looking at those specifically in the first film called What Darwin Never Knew. And I don't want you to pay attention to this, is that I want you to watch minute 30 to the end, not from the very beginning, because that's a long video. It's even long the way it is. But from minute 30, we really get into the switch genes, how they found them, what they do. And the switch genes are a direct response to the activity of regulatory genes. Regulatory genes send messages, make proteins, turn on the switch genes. The switch genes' jobs are to turn on the lower level gene, the final component, the one we started out with, the structural genes that make the stuff for your body. Now, one of the reasons that we have this three-tier system, and this is one of the things that's really not discussed, within the film at least that well, is that it allows us to have infinite variation in life. It's not. We can produce a huge amount of variation just in the structural genes, the bottom stuff. But if you can change the way the bottom stuff is turned on and off, the combination, that creates more variation. But if we can even change the way in which the middle level management actually turns on the bottom stuff, and then we can change the stuff in the bottom to itself, it creates infinite forms, most beautiful and most wonderful. That's actually a quote out of Darwin's book, the very last paragraph. And he realized that too, infinite variation. How is this accomplished? Through a three-tier genetic system. The bottom level just makes the stuff for your body known as structural genes. Switch genes turn on and off structural genes, and regulatory genes turn on and off switch genes. That's what's going to be investigated in this first film. I want you to get sort of the gist of that. All right, now next we're going to be moving to sort of a different topic. We'll learn how these genes turn each other on and off, but specifically how and where is discussed in the next video. It's a short one, it's 15 minutes, and it's by a researcher named Courtney Cox. She is a geneticist, and the title of the film is Epigenetics and the Influence on Our Genes. In this film, she'll be discussing exactly how these upper-level genes lay messages down on the DNA so that different levels of DNA can be expressed, and particularly how they do this in development. And what's the most wonderful thing about this film is that we're going to learn that your genes and how you turn out your phenotype that can be greatly under control of yourself. How you live your life can actually end up expressing your genes differently. So in other words, I could have looked like Jack Johnson probably if I only lived a little bit better the era of my ways, or Brad Pitt maybe because I'm older, right? But look how it turned out. The changes aren't that dramatic in the way you regulate your genome, but they can be, and when it comes down to actually long-term health effects. So we're going to be looking at how much control we have of our genome too in this film, which is very important. Okay. Now, the third component of just the generalizing visual stuff of the lab is going to be on the subject of ethics. And what I mean by ethics is what we're doing now in changing the course of evolution. Typical evolution works what we call by passive means, right? We don't actively change our genome. It changes itself through mutations, and over time, we look at differential reproductive success. And if some mutations have more differential reproductive success, that's sort of where species lines begins to head off to evolutionarily wise, and leaving the defective genes, or the ones that aren't quite as successful, sort of quiescing behind. Well, now humans have reached the point in which we can do self-directed evolution. That means changing our own genome. And it's really time to question this. So we're going to be looking at a small lecture by Paul Root-Wolk, and he is a leading expert in genetics and human bioengineering. And I want you to know something. This film was done quite a long time ago. I mean, this is like almost 8 or 9 years old. So even the stuff we're capable of doing now is far exceeds, the things which he's going to be talking about, which can create radical changes, not even in us, but also the other animals around us, and really change the ecology, our genetic ecology. So I want you to pay attention to some of the major points that he makes in this film, some of the big danger and red flags. All right. Now, for our lab assignment, here's what we're going to be doing. So for actual lab 4, it's going to be at the very bottom of the page. And this should be interesting for you. We're going to be watching a lecture. And this lecture is by Hermit Malik, and it's entitled Paleovirology, Ghosts and Gifts of Ancient Viruses. So Hermit works at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, and he's a paleovirologist, in other words, a biological anthropologist. And he's been looking at the effects of humans, and not only humans, but earlier primates, becoming infected with viruses in which incorporate their own DNA into our cells. And some of those cells undergo meiosis. I mean, your DNA can be affected by viruses in your sex cells, not just your body cells. And if they start reproducing viral DNA, it means those proteins will be expressed, and your body may be able to utilize those proteins. Sometimes they're beneficial, sometimes they're harmful, particularly in causing cancer. So we're going to look at this legacy of viruses, in the primate line all the way up into, particular issues we're having right now, and to look at effects and outcomes, and how we are also a product of viral infections of our ancient past. What I want you to do is, for your lab, I want you to write down 10 of the most impacting, most salient points in which Hermit makes. And he makes numerous dozens. But what are the ones that really impact you the most, his statements? And explain what each one of these statements means. Right? I mean, he says something, what does that actually mean? For us humans, right? What is the big impact of what he's saying? And then in the end, I want you to give me a brief summary, like a small 1-paragraph summary, on the overall impression that you got from this presentation. What's the overall take-home message that you've received? You've looked at your 10 points. And out of that, what's the big impactful message? Generally students that write 2 to 3 pages on a lab write-up like this do very well. Be very specific about what he's talking about, though. And also, when he's talking about something, really address it in the technical terms in which he utilizes. Show me that you're becoming a semi-professional, and you'll earn top points. So this is going to be due the day of our quiz. That's next Thursday, the 9th. We want to get that sort of done out of the way. That's when the extra credit will be due, by the way, so everything comes in on the 9th, so that we can begin the following week, working on the final portions of our lab, which will be dealing more with skeletal anatomy, comparative anatomy between humans and primates, and the evolutionary history from early primates all the way to modern sapiens, and how can we recognize this in the fossil record. All right. Now, this lab, like most of the other labs, also be aware of, submit it to me either by Canvas or by campus email. I'm still not going to be doing the assignments upload yet. I'm still a little skeptical because I'm still hearing some problems about assignments being lost and all that other issue. So, and believe me, sending in by email is just as difficult for me it is for you. It's really nice to have an assignment box where everything comes in, but I actually have to fish it from all sorts of places and place it on a separate folder. So it is actually a lot of work for me to do this, by the way, but I do it for your benefit. I don't want you to lose an assignment anywhere. I don't want any of that to happen whatsoever, because I know how hard you guys are working. All right, so keep it up. And again, any issues, give me a holler. By phone is the best, but of course you can always hit me up by email too. Bye.